What happens when empathy and love is thrown on the ground, trampled on by men, as though it was salt without taste?
Taking your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? All those nights when you've got no lights, the check is in the mail, and your little angel hung the cat up by its tail, and your third fiancé didn't show. Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna be where you can see the troubles are all the same. You wanna be where everybody knows your name. Roll out of bed, Mr. Coffee's dead. The morning's looking bright. And your shrink ran off to Europe and didn't even write. And your husband wants to be a girl. Be glad there's one place in the world where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna go where people know people are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name. Where everybody knows your name. Everybody knows your name. And they're always glad you came. Where everybody knows your name. Everybody knows your name. And they're always glad you came. Where everybody knows your name.
Hey, you guys! Hello, my friend, and welcome to the Gospel Hour with David. Glory be to God, Jesus Christ is alive. He lives. He lives. Empathy. What happens to a society when empathy is removed? Do you know what empathy is? Having the ability to put on somebody else's shoes. To see it through their eyes. To try and feel, understand the circumstances somebody else is in, as though you were that person. Putting on somebody else's shoes. What happens when empathy is taken away? Is empathy dying? Is the world growing so cold that empathy is being removed? And, this is my question. Can the Holy Spirit be present, absent of empathy and love? Can it be present? Can a person be filled with the Holy Spirit and yet be absent of empathy and love? I mean, when I think about it as a nation, I live in the United States of America where we are very unhappy. We are angry. Look at how angry we are. We're angry with the government. We're angry with our city councilmen. We're angry with the police departments. We're angry of people violating the Constitution. We're angry because we don't make enough money. Angry. And in that anger, isn't it just fear? Being afraid? Being afraid that nobody has empathy? The desire, the want to see it through our eyes. To understand our circumstances. I mean, it's tough for to have the rich rule over the poor when they've never been poor, how do they have empathy? How do they put on your shoes? Do they? Are they asking you to put on their shoes? I mean, isn't that how it always goes? Hey, Mr. Poor Man, if you want to quit crying and belly aching, put on my rich man's shoes. I have a story about a nation. There was a nation. Sometimes we think in the world and in life, the most powerful people are the politicians, the government, the kings and queens, the rulers and leaders who sit in royal houses and palaces. And those people are the people with all the power to do anything or make changes. They have the power to give life, and they have the power to withhold life. They have the power to give you a job. They have the power to not give you a job. They have the power to decide over your well-being. They have the power to tax you or not tax you. But we believe that those people have all the power in the world. But is there a force? Is there a force on earth more powerful than empathy? Than empathy. So there's this nation being ruled by a bad king. And at this time, this king is worshiping an idol, a statue, great big statue. And that statue stood all tall every day. That statue couldn't speak. That statue couldn't care. That statue couldn't hug you. That statue couldn't show empathy, love, mercy. It just stood there every day, solid as a statue. And this king decides we're going to sacrifice to the statue. To the statue. Although it had a mouth, it couldn't talk, and although it had legs, it couldn't walk. So, sacrifices his son to the statue, burning him alive. Like back in the old days when they'd burn witches alive. Burn them at the stake. Offering to the statue. To the statue. At that time, there's this great army. Comes and surrounds the entire nation, as it was a smaller nation. It's known as Jerusalem, or Samaria. And the invaders were known as Syrians. Outnumbering the small nation of Samaria by hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Sieging it. Putting it into a place of great famine. Now this nation just came out of a famine of no rain. They go experiencing 3 or so years of absolutely no rain. So all their crops and animals and food is already depleted. The rain starts coming again. Just starting to get back on their feet. And then this invading army comes and places a siege on them. Everybody begins to starve. Even to the point where a woman says to another woman, "Hey lady, we're so hungry." She's got a 8-month-old baby. "We're so hungry. And the only way we're going to survive is if we boil your baby and we eat him. And if you let us share in that meal, tomorrow we will eat my 11th-month-old baby." being in such a place of desperation, having hunger pains so strong, it was the only option. That's our hope. Today we eat my son. Tomorrow we'll eat yours. And she did it. And they ate that baby. Still, it was food. Now, and the next day came. And the hunger pains began to grow again. Ain't much meat on them little ones. She goes knocking on her neighbor's door. And, okay, let's boil up your kid. It's lunch. What? What kid? I don't have a kid. Who are you talking, lady? And then wouldn't allow her to eat that kid. This is how desperate it was. Well, the lady goes to the king, explains the situation, and the king rips his clothes. What am I, God? Am I God? Now there's this man named Elijah who wasn't there in that conversation, but he was there inside of the nation, inside of the siege, inside of that place of starvation and desperation. How is it, he says, inside of the nation of Israel, we could ever believe there is no God? Says, let's open up the gates of heaven and ask God to rain down food. Surely it will be here by tomorrow. Gatekeeper, guy who's in charge of letting people in and out of the gates, the wall. Do you really think God is just going to open up heaven and rain down food? He said, surely tomorrow, at this time tomorrow, we will all eat the finest of flour for as little as a penny. And everybody will be full, and nobody will be broke. And the guy laughs and mocks. And, you're a crazy old man. Believing in the power of prayer, God has abandoned Israel long ago. Look at the storm we are in. Hope died. Empathy died. Love died. Says, man, surely you will see it. You'll see it happen. But you will not eat of it. Because you didn't believe in God. You believe that the power of prayer and love, empathy, has no value. You'll see it, but you won't eat of it. At that very time, these four lepers are sitting on the outside of the Jerusalem wall as they're seeing the siege. So they were filled with lepers. That's a skin disease where your flesh just begins rotting right off your body. And because nobody wanted to be infected with that, they're left outside of the camp. They're unholy. They're unclean. They're cursed. But nobody said nothing to them. They ain't praying. They ain't nothing. They're just sitting there, and a thought comes to their mind. We could stay here and rot to death. The answer isn't, how are we going to die? It's just when are we going to die? Because we have been given the death sentence. And nobody cares. Empathy has died. Love has vanished. And there is no hope. Yeah, we could go back into Jerusalem where they're starving to death. You know, they've already sold themselves to cannibalism. The hunger pains are so strong. What are we going to do there? Starve with them? We're rotting to death. We could starve to death while we rot to death, which that's kind of right where we are right now. Or I could just walk right into the face of the enemy, the army. And, hey, they could kill us today. It's not about how we're going to die. When are we going to die? What are we going to die for? It's kind of like as a righteous man. At what point do we say in righteousness, today is the day? I'm ready to die. And I'm ready to die for righteousness' sake. Jesus says, if you're willing to die for me, if you died for me, not if you killed for me, no. If you died for me, surely you're not going to lose your reward. Because even though the body dies, you will go on. So they decide, yeah, we'll just go into the army. They get to keep us as prisoners. We don't care. Because, you know, when you got a prisoner, they begin feeding the prisoners. Then we get food. Get some shelter. You know. All we're doing is sitting there rotting to death. So they say of all the options, either sit here and die, waste away, go back to where they're starving and eating each other, or we go and face our enemy. They chose to face their enemies. And these 4 lepers began to walk out to the army, the Syrians who have the city under siege. And God creates a great confusion, a great noise to be heard by the Syrian army, and then they all of a sudden come up and are thrusted into a place of confusion. And they believe some giant army is going to come and attack them and defend Israel, and then maybe ignite Israel to join into their army, destroying them all. So they, in their panic and in their confusion, that they begin throwing off their armor, throwing down their swords. They left all their livestock, food, their little makeshift tents. They left everything, and everybody ran for their lives. And 4 lepers show up to the army's, the enemy's camp, and they're gone. There's nobody there. The only thing that's there is more than enough food. There's like horses and animals and everything you'd ever want. Their weaponry, their armor, all of it. And immediately the 4 men just start eating them. I'm gonna eat, and we're getting full and fat, and yeah, and then it dawns on one of them. A light comes on. Empathy came alive. How can we eat all this food? One of the guys was grabbing some and hiding it under his little special spot by the tree. Gonna store some up. How can we gorge ourselves on this food when all of our countrymen are back there starving to death. I mean, these are 4 men thrown out of the city because they're cursed, they're leprosy, and don't want that. Been abandoned by their countrymen. And then they say, what if we were in their shoes? I mean, yeah, nobody ever wanted to put on my shoes and see what it feels like to be me. But what if we were in their shoes? We have to go back. We have to go back and tell everyone about the abundance that's here, about this great gift that costed nobody a life. No one lost a life, yet the enemy just vanished. So they did. They go back and they tell everybody. Of course, come right to the gatekeeper. Hey! They abandoned everything, and there's food, and there's everything, and we can immediately be relieved from the hunger pains right now. And of course, you're lying. It's a trap. They go on to the king. It's a trap. Because I'm so engulfed in fear. And I'm afraid. I've lost hope. I don't believe all things are possible. Surely God has abandoned us. It's a trap. We're going to run out there, grab that food, and then our enemies are going to come in and ambush us. And then they begin to talk. Say, man, it's bad. We got women eating their children, fighting and squabbling over who stays alive and who doesn't stay alive. You're in charge of the protection of these people, the well-being of these people, man. And you have not done a good job. As we have seen today, look at this. It's like the evidence. You haven't done a good job. Look at the misery your people are living in. I mean, can you remember the screams your son was screaming out when you burnt him alive? And that statue still stands there. It hasn't moved. It didn't even care when our enemies came to devour us. Let's send out an envoy. Let's send out a few guys and we'll check it out. Come on. What do we have to lose? King says, okay. Scope it out, and if things are good, we'll grab it all. Of course, the messengers go out, find, sure enough, man, it was exactly as those 4 lepers said, those 4 men filled with empathy and love. Four lepers had more power to change the outcome of extreme poverty. They had the power kings and queens did not have. They had the power presidents didn't have. These 4 lepers had more power than an entire nation and an entire army. The power of God just began manifesting and pulling in because they believed. Although longevity is nice and life is good, and we surely would like to grow into an old man, but I have seen the glory of the coming of our Lord, and I shall not fear. They found out the only fear there is fear itself. And I created it. right here, and then bowed to it. A giant stampede of people ran out of the city to go get the food, and in their stampede, they ran over the top of the man who was the gatekeeper. He died. He saw it, but he did not eat of it because he didn't believe God. Is empathy being lost in our world today? And is there a greater force on earth than empathy? You know what was awesome today? You know what was awesome? The mayor came to my house. I talked to the mayor today, Minglewood. And we had a good talk. And I told her, right to her face, if you don't start representing us well, I'm gonna run for your job. And I'm gonna do what you don't do. Display empathy to your neighbors. She says, instead of running against me, because I'm a Christian, I'm a conservative, I'm right there with you, man. Run with me. Because the people who are running against me are atheists, they're wicked, they're evil, they believe in world domination, fascism. And they have a plan to change the city in a way it's gonna destroy it. That's their plan. And we need people willing to stand up for righteousness. Somewhere I saw that it says we have the right to protest for rights. For rights. We as a people, especially the United States of America, if we'd see that empathy and love, there is no greater power. And it overrides the power of atheism, racism, fear, hatred, anger, division. Having empathy. Isn't that what the point of Jesus Christ coming into this world? Hey, let me show you empathy. I want to know empathy, says God. I want to know what it's like to be in your shoes. And that's why Jesus became homeless. That's why Jesus didn't come into the world as a royal baby, but came into the world through the humbleness of a poor woman. Not the rich, but to the poor. Building upon his foundation of his kingdom, but by the well-being of the very least. Him putting on our shoes, becoming in the likeness of a man like us, coming in flesh, so that he would know. Now I know what it feels like to be you. And because I know what it feels like to be you, I can represent you in honesty, truth. Many people say, but yeah, that's wonderful. And I say it. Jesus put on our shoes so we could put on his. As he says, pick up your cross. You want to be worthy of me? You want to be my friend? You want to be my disciple? Pick up your cross and follow me. You want to understand God? You want to know God? Have empathy for God. Put on my shoes. And many people say, Dave, nobody can be like Jesus Christ. All the Christian world says. The Christian world says, you can't be like Jesus. Nobody can. But Jesus says, I give you the authority to step on snakes, drink poison. I give you the authority to cast out demons. I give you the authority to heal the lepers, the lame, the blind. I give you the power to rise dead people back to life. I give you the power and authority to be like me, says the Lord. And it's not that we can't be like Jesus. Come on, let's be honest. I don't want to be like Jesus. Let's be honest. I'd rather sit back and complain and bitch about everybody else and how they're screwing it up. I don't want to blame everyone else. Let's be honest. I don't want to be like Jesus. I know what Jesus was. I saw what he is. I know what he looks like. But I don't want it. I don't want to wear his shoes. First Epistle of John says, if we know God, if we claim in God we trust, whether we're claiming it as a nation or an individual, we say we know God, and in him we trust. But then we throw empathy on the ground. We throw love on the ground. We pick up fear, and then we lose control.
The stone that the builders rejected has become chief cornerstone, my cornerstone. This is the day that God has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Blessed is the one who comes. Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. We bless you from the house of the Lord. Bind a festival sacrifice with cords to the horns of the altar. God has given his light. He's given us life. Oh, let Israel say his love is forever. Israel say his love is forever. Let the house of Aaron say, let all those who fear God say, oh, let Israel say his love is forever.